So I want to shift over to this. There's a piece that was in the Business Insider that talks about how the housing market is on ice, or they call it the housing market's ice age. And this has a bit to do, especially with the younger generation as they're looking to buy a home. But if you look at this National Association of Realtors Home Affordability Index, you can see, and this is part from this article, you can see that in July of 2020, the supply of homes available just nosedived. And it's like if you were able to get in and buy something before July and buy a home, you were okay. And then afterwards, it just continued to nosedive. And it talks about what this means for potential buyers, not only now but in the future. And Bart, what are some of the other insights from this article that stood out to you as a millennial? You're an older millennial.
Yeah.
You're on the upper end of that curve, but you're in that cohort.
So my takeaway, and it's, to dumb it down to people who really don't understand what's going on. For me, the comparison is home buying as a millennial has been like trying to time buying Dogecoin or Bitcoin price fluctions. It's high, it's low.
Good comparison, because both of those sound like a nightmare.
But if you bought at the right time, you've probably accrued, a significant amount of wealth. But, with respect to the housing market, pre-July 2020, you could have afforded 30% more house than you could today with $300,000. You had an all-time record low mortgage rate. And if you purchase a home, you've been stacking thousands upon thousands of dollars in home equity for the past 3 years. So that's if you had bought a home pre-July 2020. Post-July 2020, you're likely sitting on the sidelines like myself and other people, a lot of millennials. We have a staff member raising her hand right now. You're still waiting on the sidelines to be able to purchase a home, waiting for mortgage rates to lower, the median home price to lower, and have spent the past 3 years just throwing 30% of your income at rent. So those are some of my biggest takeaways from this article.
It's almost like if you didn't get in, your mindset has shifted. You're probably a little cynical about the owning a home. And we've seen that in surveys. We've talked about on the podcast before. Recent survey, 70% of Gen Z said, I would prefer to rent the rest of my life. I don't care. Renting has more benefits.
Yeah.
Because you've seen, it's like you've seen that your friends who did buy, they rode the wave and they got that equity. And now if you're buying at that entry point.
Shout out to Heather here, because every time we have this discussion, she talks about this being her identity. This is, she prides herself in buying the home at the right time.
No, this was the one good thing I did. I got it right at that right time. And I think this article brought up a good point that if you're in this 30-year mortgage at this little itty-bitty mortgage rate, you're not going to sell ever. And so this has long-lasting impacts. It's a generational thing now, where the pressure now is on multifamily to be providing apartment buildings and that are what Gen Z and millennial and are looking for. And so it can still feel like a home. It's something they still want, because that home ownership is less likely for quite a while.
Well, and you hit right on the next point in the article, and the next graph I have here, the number of active homes for sale. And there's always this wave. The summer months, as you can see from this graph, kind of mid-year, we see more inventory come out. And then at the end of the year, beginning of the year, it's slower. And we see those numbers come way down since that July 2020. So these are people actively listing their homes, and those numbers have stayed so low. So that supply has stayed so low. And the reason is that you just hit on is, if you're sitting on a 2.5% interest rate, why would you sell your house today and pay 6.5%?
I think a cool thing the article talks about is like 4 contributors to why this ice age is happening. So why we have this have and have not marketplace. So first, the pandemic, it happened. And then in order to stimulate the economy, the Fed lowered the borrowing rates. So this gave everyone, this allowed people more access to mortgages, these low rate mortgages. And then demand for houses surged because people were working from home. Consequently, they wanted more space. And then, home buyers, to Heather's point, got locked into these historically low borrowing rates. And then 5, the ice age happens, which is what we're discussing right now.
We're in the ice age today. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. These consequences from big actions at the government level, the Fed, the stimulus. Now that's all getting processed and digested here in the few years after the pandemic, and this one really stands out.